Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Natsu Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale. Great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, once again, I bring it up every episode now, but I just think it's just so cool, because I still can't wrap my head around the fact that I was like, okay, the Riverdale thing, they tied it into Riverdale by having part 5 end the way it did, right? So I thought that's all we were really getting. Just as the seasons progress, it's like, no, this storyline is so intrinsic to the Riverdale stuff. There's so many parallels, which it makes sense considering how the whole Riverdale story plays out, but also how pertinent and how significant it is to this story, because Percival is continuing to do his thing. He is planning on building, like a train station, but he was going to build it through Pops. Like, Pops is going to be, demolished, and once again, going back to that conversation in Riverdale about how Pops ended up being this sanctuary, ended up being a core place in the battle of good versus evil, and it continues to be that in this Riverdale situation. So I wonder if we're going to find out this Riverdale, this whole situation, this whole, season is just, another reality. Maybe, I don't know. Because obviously the whole point of the Riverdale thing was, Riverdale and Riverdale had to become two separate realities, rather than, because the moment they collided, that's when issues arise. But we'll have to wait and see. But Tabitha is trying to go around gathering as many allies as she can. Tries to go to Archie. Archie can't be as much help because he's like, yeah, kind of having to recover from everything from last episode. And it's like, yeah, I kind of got to lay low, especially because that guy knows my weakness, so kind of can't really go toe-to-toe with him directly. She tried to go to Percival, who's like, right, you should be happy about this because, yeah, Pops is fine, yada, 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 but this will bring so many jobs, so many opportunities to Riverdale, and are you really going to stand in the way of progress? So many of your neighbors, so many of the people in this town will benefit from it, so will you be trying to hamper progress? And he tries to use his powers to push her, mind controller, but once again, they don't work. Because even Jughead later on is like, that's interesting. He's like, again and again, he's been able to push so many people except for Tabitha, and I think it is Tabitha kind of had some protection just because in the grand scheme of things. Once again, I'm still not sure about the Fangs situation, whether or not he ended up mind controlling Fangs, but he also never did it to Tony either. But once again, maybe Tony has some properties that make it impossible for him to, because he was able to control Betty, he was able to control Archie to some extent until Archie fought back. He hasn't quite been able to do it to Jughead, but I wonder, does Jughead just have natural psychic barriers because of his circumstances of his mind reading ability? But once again, Tabitha went to Veronica for help. Betty's like, yeah, just stay away from him, don't be in the same room as him. Cheryl's like, right, I gotta work on my certain skills. And at first, when the house was so cold, I'm like, why is your house so cold? I was like, oh, right. You're with your pyrokinetic abilities, you naturally burn extremely hot, and if she doesn't constantly release that power, at least keep her temperature low enough, it makes it she will eventually literally combust from it. It will end up killing her. So she's keeping the temperature low, I'm sure, just to I even love that it's freezing cold in there and she's fanning herself. It's like, yeah. But still. But Jughead accidentally slips up that while Tabitha's thinking something, he had his back turned so he wasn't reading her lip. He wasn't paying attention that she was talking. So when his back is turned and he's like, right, you've got my support. She's like, you responded to something I thought. I didn't say that out loud. He's like, and he explains everything and she's like, wait, what? Powers? Percival has powers too? Wait, this is crazy. This is wild. And, they wanted to make Pops into a landmark, and also playing into the Riverdale situation as well, showing that Pops has been such a safe haven over the years, has been there at such many monumentous moments throughout history, especially Riverdale's history, but just in the world's history as well. And when Tabitha and Jughead are looking through everything, gathering all they can to make it a landmark, a guy comes in and shoots Tabitha. But that's when she time travels. I'm assuming it's kind of, once again, a little bit of a... I interpret that as kind of a little bit of a Travelers on Netflix time travel. Once again, it's more like time traveling, not your body, but kind of your consciousness. And it seems like it's more so like that, because anytime she would time travel, she would be representing like whoever she took over, whether it's like, or whether it's a Teresa or a Tina or whatever the case may be, right? So she ends up in the 1940s. She ended up running into a couple that was, interestingly enough, it's Fangs and Tony, and I'm like, that is so interesting how those two, their lives are so intertwined, which immediately I'm like, is that supposed to be like, I would assume, because I don't remember if they ever told like Tony's grandmother's name, and I'm assuming that Annie, the baby, is supposed to be Tony's grandmother, so it's like, right. I don't know if, like, the person that was there is supposed to be... It might not be a thing of, like, oh, that's Fang's actual relative, so meaning him and Tony. Like, it might just be a thing of... Maybe that's... But it seems like it might just be implied, like, it's supposed to just be like, no, Fangs is always reincarnated into just maybe some new family or something, and then him and Tony always find their way to each other's lives. To be fair, like... I don't know if that guy that she was a Fogarty or not. It just might be like, oh, Fangs is playing, the actor who plays Fangs is playing that character, but it's just like, yeah, like, he eventually gets reincarnated into Fangs' family and eventually become, like, maybe that's what that's supposed to be. I don't know, but it's like, it is interesting, like, how those two are always, like, tied together in that regard. But, that, aspect of the episode, was fascinating. Like, terms like the Green Book, if I'm not mistaken, and do correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't watch the movie, or because I think the movie is also based on the book, but it's also based on a real thing of the Green Book. I think is meant to be a thing of, oh, these are all the places people who are in a not so safe time. These are safe places that people can go through. Like, if you've ever seen Lovecraft Country, which that conversation is going to be important there, I think it's supposed to be in Lovecraft Country. That's what Atticus's dad, but who was actually just his uncle. No, it was his uncle, but was actually his dad. I got that backwards. Courtney B. Vance's character. Because it's been a while since I've seen Lovecraft Country, so I'm blanking on some names. But he was working on pamphlets, trying to make safe routes for black folk. Like, I think that's what's going... I think that's what the Green Book's supposed to be. Once again, a lot of this stuff that gets brought up in this is stuff like the Green Book and even like a Sundown Town. I only know what a sundown town is because of Lovecraft Country. I don't think I'd ever heard that terminology in any history classes or something like that. So once again, it's just like fascinating. It's like, when did Lovecraft Country come out? Like a year or two ago? No, it was like 2020, I think, maybe. So it's like, yeah, I was 27, and that was the first time I'd ever heard that term. So it's just fascinating. We're like, right, it's, not seeing anyone explicitly never, but it's just like, I don't think, I mean, maybe it's been well over a decade. It's been a decade now since like I was in high school, so over a decade now since I was in high school, so I might not be remembering, but I don't ever remember hearing the term sundown town until like the whole thing of, if you need to get out of this town before the sun gets down, and it's like, that's wild. And you have Percival's quote unquote ancestor, whatever, wanting to make this town into a sundown town, and Tabitha was fighting and pushing back against that, and giving the opportunity, like, she protects like the Fangs and the Tony of the situation when they were in a sundown town and they managed to escape, and he tried to like, hey, I'm going to try and when Percival tries to come after them and their baby and trying to, because it's like, right, Tabitha's like, I know what happens to people who are, get in trouble like this. They vanish or worse. So she's doing all she can to help them. And she has her guardian angel, Raphael, who throughout the episode starts manifesting himself as different people. First he's Jughead, then he's Tony, and then he's Betty, which I'm also like, I wonder, I mean, there's significance in that, I think. Like, the fact that he chose those three specific people, too. Like, I think maybe that's kind of pretty significant in its own right, but still. I love it's also that, I guess that's kind of the conversation always, because I always attribute that to Supernatural, of being like, when Cassio was kind of like, right, if you ever saw my real form, it'd be too much for your mind to perceive, so it'd be a bad idea for you to ever see. And they kind of take that principle in this case, and Raphael interferes even though he really shouldn't. But it's like, right, I'm kind of meant to just watch everything play out. Like, you're here for a reason. You have this mission, and it was up to you to find out what it is. So Tabitha gets Raphael to use his powers to show his true form. Poor Kevin, who Kevin constantly is mixed up in. It's like every time you go to a different time, with the exception of 1999, he's always got Kevin by his side, whether it's 40, whether it's 68. I thought that was kind of an interesting, and just kind of like, oh, like, he's always got, I don't know necessarily if Kevin, no, because Kevin, that character isn't Kevin, because the mayor of the town is Keller, and I don't think in the 40s, so I don't know if that's supposed to be his son, like, who's working with Percival. It's just like, right, some of that is just probably like actors playing certain characters, but they're not, like, once again, like the Fang situation. That's not Fangs, it's just an actor playing that character, but it might just be a thing of like, that person isn't a Fogarty, but he eventually gets reincarnated as a Fogarty in like a later, like, type, you know? Reincarnation's heavily on my mind just because of Bugatsu Immortal Souls on Netflix. It's a really interesting kind of fantasy romance drama. If you've ever seen it, I highly recommend you check it out. I think it's a really good show, but tangents and all that aside, I was wondering whether or not that Raphael plan was going to work, though, because I was like, right, Percival's something else. But I guess he's human enough that if you stopped him, he will always perpetually come back. But, like, the moment his eyes got hurt, I was like, oh, I thought you'd be, like, resistant to it. Because, like, I, once again, kept being like, you're the devil, aren't you? Which is funny because I keep making those references, but I'm like, well, you know, the show's sibling counterpart being the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, we, got to see one Lucifer Morningstar. So it's just kind of an interesting thing, but so it's just kind of like, right, we kind of know the devil of that universe versus the devil, regardless. But luckily they were able to convince the mayor to not make the town into a sundown town, but Percival, like, even though his mind was crazy, rolled up, shot Tabitha, then she ended up time traveling a little bit further. And it's that complicated thing as a time traveler when you want to change history, and she wants to try and prevent Martin Luther King Jr. from being assassinated, but she can't. And, obviously you've delved with this into Legends of Tomorrow of fixed points in time. And I think I think the show does a really good job of Riverdale does a really good job of leaning into that. It's like, right, there are just certain points in history that are so monumentous to, like, the greater, like, state of the world that you can't just simply, like, change those things, because if you do, like, so they have to be fixed points. The sad tragedy of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination played a monumentous role in this world. It is a thing of, what would the world be like if he was still alive, if he had never been assassinated. But I think it's also the thing of progress was made from that tragedy. And so it's like, right, the world, yes, there are still issues that need to be fixed, but the world is in a better state when it comes to those elements. Yes, once again, I'm not trying to say those issues don't still persist, but the world has been on a better path since then, in those regards. So it's still a thing of, right, we need to, that's why this point can't be changed, because so much hope and progress was a byproduct of it. So, and for Tabitha, it's like, right, I have that future knowledge to make something change. I know what's going to happen and what this is going to mean. And then you have, like, Percival, who works for the FBI, of course, there, so Tabitha can't even turn to them. Any attempt to, like, try to get on a bus to Memphis, it's like, nope, the bus breaks down. Even Raphael being like, right, any attempt to actually try and like contact anyone, they probably won't listen to you. They'll think you're crazy, or the line will cut out, or both, because the universe is going to try and keep this fixed point from being changed, so nothing you do will, change that. But now it's a situation of, with that happening, and Pops ended up becoming a focal point for people to gather, everyone to like mourn and pray and share their thoughts about everything. And Percival showed up to try and shut that down, because you can tell immediately where he was like, right, things are going there. We don't, riots could pop up and things could lead to bloodshed. And Tabitha knew, or based on that statement, is like, right, he's looking for an excuse. If we go out there and get violent, he's just going to use that as an excuse, just looking for any excuse to shed blood. Our blood. Let's not give him that opportunity. Let's stay here. In fact, using her future knowledge, Tabitha got Hoover to fire Percival, but he still set up a bomb there. But luckily, before the bomb could go off, Tabitha time traveled again and ended up in 99. And we see more. Well, because in 68 we saw a younger Pop Tate. Then in 99 we see a slightly younger. The kid, what was his name? Brian? I'm blanking on his last name. I was like, that name is significant, isn't it? I just don't know who that guy is necessarily. I don't remember. What's his name like? Was it Brian Talbot or something like that? Talbot? And I was like, why does that name sound familiar? He's probably related to like a significant character that's been in the, whether it's a character that's still alive or not, but it's probably like correlates to someone in Riverdale, because we do see like a younger Sheriff Keller. Also, that whole thing about 88 being a white supremacist number, I'm like, I feel like that's something I also learned in more recent years. And once again, it's always that thing of, cool. Like, there's plenty of things that, once again, just, I mean, that's a modern day thing too, of just like, so many things getting co-opted. Like, once again, like, the original swastika, obviously it was changed, but the original symbol for swastika was like, and once again, just one of those later knowledge things you learn is like, right, it used to be a Buddhist symbol that the Nazis co-opted and changed. So I guess that's probably happened a lot more in history than that I'm aware of, but that's a prime example of that. Now, obviously, we get like a more modern day representations of like, it's a weird example to use, but like Pepe ended up being used as a, Pepe the Frog, like, ended up getting co-opted as a white supremacist like symbol like a couple years ago and shit like that. I don't know if that's still a thing or not. I don't think it is, but I remember for a while that was an issue a couple years ago. I actually would love to read into that, and because I remember the person who created Pepe was kind of like, no, I don't like this thing I created getting used in that regard. Once again, tangents and all that aside, seeing the number 88 was like, yeah, because I feel like that's such a, maybe that's always been a thing in the past, but I feel like that was something I only learned in the more recent years about, because it feels familiar. Like that didn't just seem like something I heard in the show. I was like, I feel like I've heard that like at some point. Once again, tangents aside, but once again, and I think this is an interesting thing. Like, none of these other versions of Percival have shown the superpower that present day Percival has shown. So it's like, right, you had this mind controlling ability, and it seems like you might have it in 99, but we never really got to see it in the 40s or in 68. So the question then becomes like, right, is that something you develop now, or does it make it easier for you to, I don't know, maybe it was always there and it just never got really fully utilized, because the Brian kid was like, yeah, I don't even remember spray painting that on like the side of Pops. He was just like, right, I can't remember. So he was being mind controlled. So turns out the Percival in this town runs a shop, which like the shop, like, obviously it's a more evil version of it, but it kind of reminds me of like, Rumpelstiltskin's shop in Once Upon a Time. It held like certain similar elements, at least to me, but nevertheless, Tabitha ended up finding all those significant artifacts. And the moment that spear was there, I was like, wait, is that what I think it is? And it's like, oh yeah, that's the spear that stabbed Jesus. I'm like, oh, and this is also the Holy Grail. You're like, huh. And I guess, and at first I was like, it is interesting. I was like, aren't you supposed to be? You're also the devil, so it's like, right. But he's like, right. He's not necessarily the devil. He's evil personified is kind of what they're just labeling it as. So it's like, right, I guess it would make sense that you would collect a whole bunch of holy artifacts, wouldn't you? So, Tabitha and him duel it out, and she may have killed him by stabbing him with the spear, but he just disappeared, and it's like, right, is the Holy Grail her actual totem? But it turns out it's not. Because the moment that was all happening, I was like, Pops is going to end up being her totem, right? And it's like, yes, it is. So she ends up returning present day. But I love that they're like, oh no, she didn't just pop. Because I was like, oh, it seems so unceremonious that she was drinking like the milkshake out of that grail, and then she pops back to present day, and she stops to shoot her, and she explains everything. It's like, right, and I actually really like the terminology, I'm a cryokinetic. I was like, I like that. I've never heard a time traveler being referred to that as like a cryokinetic. I've never heard that terminology. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now it's like, once again, it's like, wow, Riverdale's getting its own little Justice League. Got Archie, Betty, Cheryl, Jughead, and now Tabitha. But Tabitha gathered everyone up and ended up telling them what was what. And it's like, okay, so not only did I'm learning about my abilities, but even Jughead's like, right, why didn't Archie, me, Betty, or Cheryl get a guardian angel? It's like, I guess because her circumstances are a little different because of also the significance of Pops. So what it's always represented in this battle of good versus evil and how Tabitha's so important. That's why I'm like, I wonder, is it just being a cryokinetic that protected her mind? Is it because like of a time traveler's mind or something like that? Or is it just because it's like, no, because she's literally got a guardian angel looking out for her, which I'm like, makes you wonder, are we going to see Raphael still out and about? Because the only person who'd be able to see him would be Tabitha, like always anyway. So, but I love that Tabitha actually got control of her abilities, and she time traveled to the future, and she saw what's coming. Riverdale being a shell of itself, that Percival is once again an evil, constantly being reincarnated that has been here throughout history, trying to destroy Riverdale. And so it's almost that time loop thing of, you're like, right, has Tabitha always supposed to go back in time and change things, or is it just that journey was needed for her battle? To learn to control her powers and help arm everyone with the knowledge needed to fight this upcoming battle of good versus evil? Or is it supposed to be a thing of like, right, all those events happen, and who she was being in all those respective times, she was there. Like, yes, she did things a little differently, especially with the Hoover thing in 68, but maybe each person she was, whether it was Teresa or Tabitha, always helped make things what they are, and she just happened to like time travel to their consciousness at the time or whatever. But it's fascinating, and once again, I'm back to my point of like, all right, so some other key people, and it's like, so Tony's going to have a power, right? Or are we just going to stay with these five? I'm like, are we going to find out Tony has a power? Fangs maybe? I don't know, because Tony is pretty connected to some of this stuff, because not only her story in the second part, once again, there's also those parallels, because I didn't even pay attention to this last episode, and I'm pretty sure I didn't say anything, but Reggie and Veronica being at odds is very much like the part... Was that? No, it was part 3 of the Riverdale situation with the devil, because Reggie kind of betrayed her, but like, I'm like, is Veronica get ability? Is Reggie going to get one? You would assume it also has some correlation with the whole Rivervale thing, which I would assuming that will play a culmination to all of this. Like, the Rivervale stuff is going to play a significant role, like in the sense of all that's going to come like together and fold into this battle. I would assume that the Rivervale stuff is going to help. Maybe this entire time it's like been helping all the entire time, and maybe when it's all said and done, at the end of the season, the entire season's going to reset. So by that I mean is, like, it's going to be like, right, we're going to create a alternate reality again, but when this is all said and done, it's like, right, we're going to keep an alternate reality to where we go back to a normal Riverdale without all these powers. So like, very much like the Rivervale thing at the end, where it's like, I think that's going to be the parallel of almost like, oh, everything kind of goes back to normal and no one's the wiser except the version of Jughead that writing the story, but to everyone else, it's just everyday life in Riverdale. So I think that's what's going to happen to Riverdale. It's like, right, Riverdale and Riverdale and Riverdale are going to come together maybe, and a new Riverdale is going to be born, putting it on a better path to getting away from some of its evil. So none of this season will have technically happened, just like Riverdale, but that's where I'm kind of getting the feeling like this is the trajectory going, because once again, we just keep paralleling a lot of the events of the Riverdale stuff. So that's also why I'm curious, like, is Tony going to have some, like, water-related power or some correlation there? I mean, she ended up having to gave up baby Anthony in that regard, and now the same thing is happening here. I think maybe those, as far as those parallels will go, but I don't know. Like, I'm assuming the rest of, like, the main, like, cast of, like I said, Reggie, maybe Veronica, and I would assume, like, maybe Veronica and Tony might get the abilities, but I don't know about Reggie or Fangs. But still, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the hell all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. It's going to be wild. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.